I can close about 4 of them at that minimum $3,000 package. So if we take those 4 clients that I closed times $3,000, and guess what? That's 12 grand for the same amount of work that it took me to make 500 bucks. If you're watching this video, my guess is you're a photographer, videographer, or content creator that wants to either work with better clients, get paid more per job, or ideally both. And I know this sounds crazy because a lot of people try to overcomplicate it, but if you can just nail this one core thing, you will absolutely be able to name your price for any client that you work with, kind of like this guy. So he charged $2,800 a month for about 3 hours of filming and a little bit more time editing, which he actually outsourced. And to be honest, he could have charged probably a lot more than that, but that equates to $33,000 over the course of 12 months, which was how long the contract is. So again, I know this sounds crazy because you've probably seen all the people saying, go do free work, go do free collabs, do a free stay, do a free brand collab, you know, work for cheap, because eventually once you work for cheap, then eventually you'll get paid projects. But guess what? You've probably done that. You've realized that working for free, number one, you don't get paid. Number two, is a lot of work. So you try to go get paid, and then you realize that most clients try to lowball you or say they don't have the budget. Does that sound familiar? So if you don't know who I am, my name's Nash Hagan. I'm a resort and brand photographer, and I've worked with some of the biggest companies in the world. Companies like Westin, Hyatt, Marriott, Four Seasons, and a whole lot more as well. I've charged 5-figure deals. Some of them I have on retainer. And basically, I say this not to brag, but because I do know a little bit about the travel industry and what it takes to actually land deals with these types of clients. So my goal with this video is really to break down my journey from basically dead broke to making over $100,000 a year as a content creator. So hopefully you're able to learn from my journey and be able to implement some things that I now know that I wish I knew back then. So what is that golden key that was able to allow me to unlock these high ticket clients? One word, and it is an offer. So what the heck even is an offer? Well, it's basically just the value you provide the client in exchange for the money that they're gonna pay you. And you probably just heard that and you're like, well, the value I provide is just my content services or my creative services. And if you said that, you would be partially correct. So if you're saying that the value you provide the client is just your content, then that's honestly probably why you're not getting paid that much, because really your value is far beyond just the content that you produce. So I'm gonna get into that a little bit more in the rest of the video here, but just know that your value is much higher than just the content you produce. So let me give you an example from my personal story. So when I was first getting started, I had an absolutely horrendous offer, which probably explained why I got basically no sales. So let me just break it down to you. So basically, I would just reach out to brands and I'd pitch them something like, hey, my name's Nash. I'm a photographer that's based in Hawaii. I'd love to take your product on an adventure with me. Would you be interested in having some professional content produced? And it was surprising to me at the time, but now knowing what I know now, it's not surprising that I got barely any responses to that. And the reason why I got no responses is because the offer was terrible. Basically, if anybody responded, what I would tell them is I'll give you photos at $100 a pop. And what I realized is the clients I did work with, which wasn't that many, would typically want about 5 photos, meaning that on average per client that I had, I would make about 500 bucks a client. So depending on where you're at in your career, that may sound good or bad. For me at the time, I was kind of stoked on it, but to be honest, it's not that good. So depending on where you're at in your career, 100 bucks a photo might sound great, or it might sound terrible. For me at the time, I was like, well, whatever I can get sounds good. But I soon realized after that, that it actually was a whole lot of work to only make 500 bucks. So let me break down the numbers. So let's just say, for example, that I reached out to 100 companies. So because my offer was just terrible and not positioned well at all, if I reached out to 100 companies, I would probably only get about 10 positive responses, if that. And then I had zero sales process, didn't know how to do sales in general. So I'd always try to sell them on the DM or on the email or whatever I reached out on. And I would only close about 10% of the people that had the positive response. So that leaves me with like 1 close per 100 reach outs. So 1 close was equal to $500, meaning that I would have to reach out to 100 people just to make 500 bucks. And that's not including doing the shoot, doing the revisions, talking to the client, any of that kind of stuff, which is really not that good. So in order to just make a baseline living of like $3,000 a month, I would have to close 6 clients, which means I would have to reach out to about 600 people. That's a lot of time. So to be honest, I didn't even make $3,000 a month because I didn't want to reach out to 600 people just to make that $3,000 a month. So I started to think of ways that I could maybe optimize this to make more per client, or at least close better, right? So my initial thought was maybe I'm just not sending enough emails, so I'll send more. So I started kind of like automating it-ish by like copy and pasting emails, not personalized at all. And my closing rate kind of went down just because it was so impersonal. So that didn't really work. So I was like, well, maybe it's what I'm saying in the email that actually matters. So I started to switch what I said as well as what I actually offered, and I created what I would call like an average offer. This is something that a lot of creators will do. It's something that brands have like a little bit of budget for, but they're not going to go out of their way to pay you for. So let me just just explain what mine was. So my version of this average offer was essentially exactly the same as what my other one was. I just added on a 30-second banner video for $1,000. So it slightly increased the amount of interest that clients had in my product just because I could do video. It gave me a little bit more versatility, but it wasn't really the biggest change. Pretty much the only benefit of it was that I kind of increased my average order value slightly because some of the clients would go for the video. So now instead of averaging like $500 per client, I would average between $1,000 to maybe $1,500 a client. So that was fine for a little bit, but I still realized like I could really optimize this. So what I did is I started learning sales. I started learning offer creation. I started learning all kinds of other skills that were not related to photography. So I could build out the perfect no-brainer package that clients would see and they'd be like, wow, this is like not even comparable to any other photographer. And they'd be willing to pay me a whole lot more than what I was charging before. So I went through this research process, read a bunch of books, bought a few courses as well, and finally compiled this together to apply directly to content creation. And this is kind of what I did. So after compiling all this information, I basically created what I call the no-brainer offer that allows me to charge kind of whatever I want. And I will say my baseline of this is $3,000, so I don't go below $3,000, but it can go all the way up from there. I've charged as much as $40,000 for a project before. So what is the offer? Well, it's just a content package with bonuses added on. So let me explain the difference. So first off, I'm charging $3,000 for it, which is 6 times higher than what I was charging before. So you might think, okay, well, you're just making 6 times more. Not so fast. It's actually a lot more than that. So what happens when you have an amazing offer is now when I reach out to 100 people, instead of getting 10 to respond, I might get 40 or sometimes even 50 people to respond positively. And of those people, I can maybe get 10 of them onto a call and I can close about 4 of them at that minimum $3,000 package. So if we take those 4 clients that I closed times $3,000, and guess what? That's 12 grand for the same amount of work that it took me to make $500 before. That's the power of having an incredible no-brainer offer, because not only are you making more money, but you're also spending significantly less time doing reach out, doing sales, doing prospecting, sending emails, follow-ups, all that kind of stuff, because you have an offer that's dialed into a very specific client. So then the question becomes, well, how do you create an offer that can allow you to make 6 figures or something that you can charge at least $3,000 a month for? Well, the answer to that is you got to get a little bit creative. You got to think, what is my target audience or my target client? What is a major problem that they have that I can solve with my content? What's something that keeps them up at night, that their boss is on it, that they can't afford not to fix? Figure out what that problem is and then reverse engineer it to figure out how you can solve that with your content. So let's just say, for example, that your client needs to get a better return on their ad spend through the creatives that you create for them. Well, if we reverse engineer that, how can we create bonuses that actually align with that same goal? So yes, we might create 15 organic videos that they can post, that they can test out, but what if we do things like a posting checklist or a cheat sheet or content strategy, or maybe we even write captions for them that are optimized for SEO, right? There's like all kinds of different things that you can stack on as bonuses that allow you to charge significantly more than any other content creator does, because now all of a sudden you're not just a creator that's making reels, but you're actually a content strategist. You take the role of kind of like a social media marketer or even just a content marketing strategist that the brand can kind of confide in for their content strategy. So what most people will do is they'll start to make packages for their content, or they'll consider them offers. They're not really, but they'll make packages for their content that are tiered based on the amount of deliverables they have or the amount of time they take. You know, if you charge on a day rate or something like that. And obviously, like if you're doing 10 photos versus 15, the 15 are probably going to be more expensive, but you got to optimize this for the results, because if you're only valuing yourself on how many deliverables you give them, then your value actually stops once you give them the content or once you step off of set, right? If you're charging a day rate, your value stops once the day is over, right? Which in reality, when you're making content, that's just like a given. Like you have to show up on set, you have to shoot, you have to edit, you have to deliver it to the client. But in reality, the vast majority of the value of the content, if you do this right, is actually after they post it, after they put it on their website, after they start running it as an ad, right? So you need to tie your value actually to the end result and optimize your value to that end result. Meaning like, hey, yes, I'll make 15 videos for you, but the goal here is to find a real winner that does better than what you have right now. So you can run this as an ad, and then I'm going to charge a performance fee on top of that based on how well the ad performs. Then your goal is aligned as well as the client's goal being aligned to make as many sales as humanly possible off of the creative that you make them. So another example that I hear a lot is UGC creators, right? So they'll pitch UGC and the client will come back and like, hey, you know, we don't have the budget for UGC. You know, it should be cheaper because it's not as high quality. You're just shooting it on your phone. It's not high production value, all this kind of stuff. And they start talking down the UGC creators because they just say the content isn't high quality. But I mean, think about it. How many high quality, high production value commercials have you seen that brands spend hundreds of thousands of dollars on that absolutely tank, and then somebody goes out and spends 5 minutes, films a little TikTok, barely edits it at all, the thing goes viral, and they get tons of sales. So not always is that the case, but you got to keep in mind, like, the production value really is not the value of the piece of content. The value is actually the results that it delivers. So it's really just a completely different mindset, a completely different way of looking at things. A lot of clients maybe haven't even thought about this before. So you have to kind of bring it to their attention that the value is actually what happens after they post versus just you showing up on set. So all that to say, having a killer offer is vitally important for you to be able to work with the big time clients and charge what you want. So make sure that you optimize whatever you are selling to the client's core desire or their core end result that they want. Add on bonuses, make yourself different than everybody else. So if everyone's offering Reels, well, how can you offer a Reels package that helps the client get their end result, their actual result? Because it's probably not just getting 15 Reels a month, right? It's probably some sort of sales or marketing focused end result they want. So how can you help them get there faster and with less of their effort? Once you can figure out that, you set yourself apart from the rest of the competition. Everyone else is irrelevant because everyone is competing for peanuts. They're price gouging, and you can basically charge what you want because you become a one-of-one service provider. So that's really what I help my content creator clients do, is figure out what their offer is, how they're different, and how to set themselves up as a one-of-one service provider so that clients see it and they're like, wow, this is something we absolutely need and we can't afford not to have. That's the position you want to be in, and that's what I help my clients do. So if you're interested in working with me personally one-on-one, check the link in the description below, book in a time with a member of my team to walk you through my entire process of how basically the entire roadmap to success, to growing your business to 10,000, 15,000, and even beyond per month, our entire scaling framework, and help you implement it into your business as well. So if that makes sense for you, check out the link in the description, and we cannot wait to chat with you. Otherwise, I hope you got value out of this video. If so, give a massive subscribe and like the video. Check out the rest of the videos on the channel because we got tons of really helpful stuff that you're not going to find on many of these other YouTube channels. So hope you got value out of this video. If so, share it with your friends that are trying to become content creators and do it full time, and I'd be super appreciative to you for it, and I'm sure they would as well. And I'll see you in the next one. Peace.